Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode on the 6 series. On my car the steering rack failed, started leaking pretty badly, and that had to do with, I think, my fault. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode on the 6 series. On my car the steering rack failed, started leaking pretty badly, and that had to do with, I think, my fault, because basically when I changed the tie rod ends, something just went bad with the installation of that and caused water to leak into it and cause corrosion. So basically the only thing was replace the rack. The seals are not very accessible. Used, these racks are very inexpensive, which suggests, again, not a lot of people need them. I did not film everything completely. I filmed the start of it, and then basically it started taking quite a while, and I didn't want to take up shop space for too long because, well, it's supposed to be for the shop use, not for my own personal videos. So I filmed what I could, and I missed a couple of the details here and there. So this is not a full DIY, but it's an overall idea of what I went through to do it. If I were to do it again, I would not do it the way that I did it. I would have probably gone with the more BMW recommended method, which is just to change the entire rack. I only changed part of the rack. This DIY will apply to the F chassis 5, 6, and 7s that are xDrive only. This does not apply if you're two-wheel drive, because you have an electric rack. This is a hydraulic rack in the xDrives. If you're doing this, BMW says to drop the subframe, and I didn't think that I would need to because I could access all the screws, but there just is not enough clearance to pull the rack out of the car, just because you have the power steering pump in the way of that steering mechanism that sticks out of the rack. And the other thing is, BMW recommends that you change the seals. I bet you could get away with not changing those really overpriced seals. They're full of oil and they weren't really that compressed. If you want to go ahead and get them, I'll link them down below, so you can get a set for yourself. You need 3 if you want to do this job. I didn't know how many I needed based off of the instruction manual on how to do this job. And the bolts, basically there are 6 bolts that BMW would probably recommend that you replace, but it seems like it's just they want you to replace it because it's Loctite. It's basically 3 different lengths. 2 of the lengths you're gonna have are for the sway bar link, and then there's a third one that's even longer that is for the back screws themselves. I don't think you need to buy them, so I'm not even gonna link them. They are steel bolts, they're not aluminum, so no sense in really replacing those. I didn't want to drop my subframe just for the safety of it, but I probably just would drop it fully and just take it all out completely. With that in mind, please watch the video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. I ordered 2 of these very expensive gaskets, and you actually end up needing, I think, about 3 depending on what you do. You've got essentially 2 in here, so 1 for each line. See, there's a line there, there's a line there. So because I'm replacing all these lines here, because they're rusty and cut from the wrecking yard, I need to replace the entire lines. I'll show you now what's wrong with the car. Okay, so now that we're up, if you look right there, that's a pretty wet looking cover right there, right? See how it's all like slimy and nasty? So this wouldn't come from anywhere other than the rack that comes behind it. I have been losing level as well. Let's take off that cover. It's just a series of 8mm screws, and then I'll show you more in depth on how the rack looks. Okay, by the power of editing, I just took out all those screws. Last one, and pull this out. Look, we got the cover off, and look what we can already see pretty easily. Now we can already pretty much see the rack, not too bad, right? So I don't think we need to drop the subframe to get this thing out. This reinforcement plate is definitely gonna have to come down again, and we're also gonna need to remove the tie rod end screws, and that's gonna allow us to basically remove the tie rods from the actual rack itself. And we're also gonna need to take out these clips here. So I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the next step of this whole process, which is removing these boots. So you've got two sort of things that hold these boots on and semi-seal the internals away from the elements. So you've got one clamp here and another clamp here. And this is one of those German style clamps, crimp clamp. So here's your crimp clamp. So what you gotta do is you just take like a little flathead screwdriver, put it inside, and you just gotta spread the crimp. Just a little bit, not too much, because you don't wanna ruin the clamp. I mean, you're technically supposed to replace them every single time, but I've always gotten away with just reusing them. And then there's a little hook at the end, and you just gotta lift it off that hook. And then afterwards you just straighten it out, and then you get away with reusing this stuff. So you just take it off nice and easy. Right, there it is. So this, not the best work, I'll be honest. Sometimes I do it a little bit better, but this is still salvageable. You can still reuse this. So now we just got to get that big old tool and unscrew this whole thing. It takes quite a bit of force to break this free, and then it comes off pretty easy. Just broke it free. I had to use one of these and an extension bar. Squeeze it really hard, stand on the actual rack so it wouldn't flex. That was probably the most difficult part of it. And now we can just unscrew this. And we're free. We gotta basically do the exact same thing right now on the car. So this is gonna be the most interesting thing for me, I think, because I wanna see how bad the actual fluid is in here. Look, you can see it's actually dripping, literally dripping over there. So it's pretty bad. I bet you there's gonna be a nice pool of fluid in here. So I think I found the issue with the rack here, and that is that there's moisture that got into here. So it's possible that that's what's gonna be the issue on that side. But this just looks disgusting, looks nasty as hell. So I don't think that that's coming from inside out, that moisture. I think it's coming from outside in and causing that seal at the end to corrode. And I guess I just didn't clamp these down tight enough, or I didn't clean up the surface well enough and the moisture was getting in. So that's gonna be our problem right there. Let's just see if I can actually see the end over there. But it looks pretty corroded if you ask me. Woohoo! That's a lot. Yeah, it's a pretty sizable amount. My whole arm covered in crap. That's a lot. That's a lot of fluid to go. So I think the rack is done. So we loosened this. So now let's basically just unscrew it. And I'm curious to see what we find inside. But it doesn't look like there's any of that corrosion crap that was on the other side. Let's start it up and see what leaks. I'm gonna turn the wheel a little bit, see if that makes any changes. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove this steering shaft off the car, and this is going to allow us to take off the entire rack. So this is just an E10 screw. I've never done one of these, so I'm trying this first on the rack that's off the car in case there's any special tricks. Then you're going to need to support this with your foot to counter hold it. Okay, so that's the screw. It just pulls off now. Ouch. Some other tricks here. There might be. I might have to spread this pinch sort of connection apart, and that might make it easier. But see, I guess. Okay, so status update. It's been about an hour of me fiddling around with this piece of crap. Don't try and disconnect it from here. Disconnect it from this point right here. It is a absolute hell of a lot easier. It just goes like nothing. So now I need to basically just put that screw back in and take it off the car. So under the car, it is literally right there. So not too bad to get to, just don't burn your hands on the exhaust if your exhaust is still hot. So this will just turn, hopefully it will turn. Yeah, nice and easy. Right there. And you can see it now right down there. So it's gonna be a bit tricky with all these heat shields in the way, but E10, and that thing's gonna come off no problem. So at this point, these things are basically loose from each other. You can tell there's some play between the two. So that means that these things will come apart once we start pulling the rack apart. Unfortunately, I can't pull it out now. This side doesn't want to go any further back, and this side doesn't want to go anywhere there by design. So basically when we pull the rack out, this is just gonna come out. Next thing is we gotta start prepping the rack to come out. So there's gonna be some lines and stuff that we're gonna disconnect. So this line will have to be disconnected. There's a plug over here that we'll need to disconnect. So that will need to be done. And there might be something else, like a quick disconnect hose over here for the actual reservoir. So I figured out how to remove this cable without taking off this line. It's just basically here. There's this little connection. So this unscrews, it's a 10mm nut. Then this little clamp comes off and it gives you enough wiggle room to pull that cable out. And then you've got a sort of clip-on design here. And it clips into the back of there, and then you basically can free that cable up, and that will be one less thing for you to take off later on. Okay, and so now you can see this line can move around freely, and now you can access behind here that plug and unplug it. Alrighty, so just like I said, got that cable out. This one actually didn't have any clips on the rack itself. We basically got to start disconnecting these lines, and then we can get to the 4 screws that hold in the actual rack itself. We may also need to drop the sway bar just to give us a little bit more room. I've already done, like, basically taken this out of the way in preparation for that. So I'm playing around with the lines here. I'm trying to figure out where this one here goes, and actually I found it, and it is, if you see my finger, I'm basically just following that line. So you can just about make out my finger over here. This is the end of that line, and that goes to your power steering cooler. Alrighty, so I just came back after a bit of a break, had some nice lunch. So I played with this, took this out. There's 2 little screws over here, so I just pulled those out. So now I can really just move this line around, and that may give me some advantage, but still playing around with how I would really, which way I should go. What I might end up doing is I might end up disconnecting the sway bar right now, disconnecting the rack, seeing if I can move it around, and if I can maybe get to those lines over here and just disconnect it from the rack instead of disconnecting it over here. So anyways, I think you can just about make out that quick disconnect up there. So getting your hand up there, there's just no way to get your hand in there. So I'd have to go with like screwdrivers and stuff like that. Where that is technically an option, we can try that. But I have a feeling that disconnecting it here after removing some stuff, i.e. the rack and the sway bar, is gonna be a little bit more feasible. So I'm gonna take off that sway bar right now. So longer ones in the back, shorter ones in the front. Because obviously it's gotta go through the steering rack. Sway bar is down. So let's just get these plastics out of the way so we don't bend them. Brilliant. So there's these little brackets that sit on these little sway bars here. So now we see that the rack is loose. So we might be able to peek behind there and get to this. I wonder if we can remove this bracket now. Yeah, it's basically just sort of held in by the lines. So So now that this is out of our way, we can just about probably get to where we need to get to, which is back there. So let's see here. How does it look on this one? Oh, it doesn't look like it's gonna be fun, because we can see just about this, and we need to get up there. And up there, that is not looking fun. So let's maybe, oh, we have some more fun stuff in the way, because now this thing is blocked. So how are we gonna get this around without dropping the subframe? Oh boy. Okay then, so I've got some playing around to do again. Great. Okay, so this you can just about force out. There's this sort of groove here. You're gonna see it that it's gonna ride along that, and it just comes out. So you have to kind of angle this whole thing on this. So this is the first side that came out for me anyways. Now we gotta play around with this side, see what's going on over there. Maybe we're still being held up at the top there by... Okay, so status updates here. I don't know if I let you guys see this yet or not, but I already took this thing out. So this is no longer connected up here. All the bolts are out like I showed you. This thing slid it forward, and this side is being a pain in the butt. We are getting held up mostly by the AC compressor, which is over here. And that is a component of the engine. So we would have to either, and we're getting stuck on like the back portion here where you have that plug. So like, as you can see, I can move this around, and then I get to here, and it gets stuck. So I can't really do too much. I can't really move it left, right, tilt it, anything like that. So I am at a bit of a block over here, and it's kind of frustrating. But we can do a couple things at this point. We could try to separate this from this component here that has this plug on it, or we could try and give us some more clearance. So what would really work here? We could lower the subframe, we could raise the engine. If you lower the subframe, you're raising the engine anyways. So I think the easiest solution over here, maybe I'll have some brainwave by tomorrow when I do this. But I think I'm gonna leave this set here tonight, because what I'm gonna have to do is take out these screws for the motor mount over here. Where are we? These screws here, 1 and 2 and 3 actually, so 3 screws. And on the other side, the same thing, 1, 2, 3. Raise the engine off the subframe, lift the car, and to this position so I can pull this thing out, and then once we have more space, we'll just pull this out. All we need is probably an inch more space. So an inch off of the subframe, that's all we need from the engine, and then we can pull this rack out, and then we won't have to drop the subframe, which will be much better than dropping that, because this will provide an extra layer of protection in case anything were to go wrong with that engine support bar that we got. Subframe was lowered, engine was raised, and it still wasn't enough room. So in the end, we ended up separating the two pieces of the steering rack from each other. Made a huge mess. So get your buckets ready. So we disconnected those. As you can see, we are just gonna leave this thing in, and we're just gonna match up the other part, because that part was good. So we're gonna remove this and just put this section, we're just gonna put this section here back on from here. Before we open this up, we're gonna clean up all this stuff perfectly so we don't get any dust inside, and because it's much easier right now while it's off the car than when it's on the car. So, and we're gonna be very precise with it, make sure everything is perfect, and then we'll get this thing taken apart and ready to go back on the car finally. Out anyways. This one will come out at least. Oh. Literally just took a pry bar and just pried on it a little bit, and that was enough to get it to here, and that's it, it comes out. And now we got this whole assembly off. Final moments before install. So it's all cleared of all this stuff. Filled the crap out of this area with grease. Some grease there, and some grease there. This is all polished up nicely so that it's good surface. So we got a good seal later.
It's almost there. Okay, so it's not connected over there. Getting closer. Almost. Yeah, she's in. She's in. Believe it or not, she's in. These bolts that I put on, they're a little bit longer, so they could do the rest of the walking, if you will.
Okay, update. Rack is in. We have bolts just to sort of semi-hold it in right now. Lines are connected on the front over here and the back. Everything's oily and slippery and yuck, gross. But now for safety, we gotta put the subframe bolts back up to their optimal position. So 6 of those all around. So you got, I didn't even show this before, you got one there. You have one behind the cover here. And you have one all the way back here. Kind of like an E92 if you ever worked on one of those. Still quite a bit to go. Actually, we're not quite in line, it seems. Actually, no, we are. We're good. 'Cause there's the holes there. And on this side, look how much higher we are. Day 3 working on the 650. So we're just gonna button everything up today, all the plastics. We gotta do still the sway bar, the tie rod ends, and basically just button all the plastics up and the supports that goes in this thing. Alright, so clamps installed over there. That's tightened down. Everything is tightened down. We gotta just clean off all the oily residue on it. We packed everything with a lot more grease this time in an effort to make it hydrophobic and not rust again, because that looks like that was the issue this time. We also checked that the rack can move around no problem, and yes it can. So that's always a good sign that we're gonna be okay. Now basically just this reinforcement plate on the bottom, and then we're gonna basically do a test start, see how it's doing. So we gotta fill it up, bleed the system, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. So I forgot a critical step when we were putting the two parts of the rack together. Essentially, I didn't line up the steering wheel to the shaft, so I got a whole bunch of error messages on the screen, as well as the wheel was about 180 degrees off of where it should have been. So I screwed up when I was putting the two parts together. We're gonna try and counteract this by basically, this only goes one way. We are going to make this go a second way, and hopefully that's gonna counteract this issue.